All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's threefold demo session. Here with me today is Mik. Mik will be giving the demo. Before we start with that, just going to tell you a little bit about the topic for today's demo, which is Nextcloud. Go on to the next slide, please. So our agenda for today, we'll have a look at the manual that documents how you can deploy Nextcloud onto the threefold grid. We'll be using a solution that actually Mik and I developed together. So we have a nice solution in the dashboard that is really easy to get started with. You'll be seeing that today, how easy it is. We're going to give a short introduction on Nextcloud, and we'll go into the demo, show you how to deploy, show you the features that are there, and then we'll wrap up with some questions. Do you want to show the manual now, or do you want to show it during the demo, perhaps?
Yeah, I will show it before the demo.
Cool, sounds good. So Nextcloud, if you're not familiar, is a very popular open source content collaboration platform. You can store, share files. You can collaborate on documents. It has a lot of the functionality that you expect to find in like a Dropbox, Office 365, or Google Drive. It also has video conferencing and chat functionality. So Nextcloud is really aiming to be a complete replacement to all the things that we use the big clouds for today in our personal lives and also in business setting as well. So on the next slide, we'll see some of the key features. So as mentioned, we have file storage and sync. You can upload your files. You can sync them to different devices. You can share them with friends via nice links like we're used to. We have collaborative editing based on Collabora Online Office Suite. There's video conferencing provided by Nextcloud Talk. There's end-to-end encryption, two-factor authentication for strong security. We got themes, plugins, and it scales up. Like I was mentioning, it can be used for organizations as well as individual and personal use. And it's also open source, which we love at Threefold. Means that you were free to deploy this, use it however you want to. And if you want to, you can also modify the source code. And we didn't get into that yet. We'll just be showing regular deployment of Nextcloud today. And the final thing I'll mention is that there are various ways to deploy Nextcloud. The one that we'll be showing today is known as All-in-One or AIO, and it's a convenient way to deploy various features of Nextcloud all together, but it's not the only way. There are other ways to deploy it that are more manual, for example. So with that, I will hand it off to Mik for demo time.
So hi guys. So as Scott said, there are different ways to deploy. You can go on the manual here on the ThreeFold Dashboard, deploy application Nextcloud, and then you can have all the different ways to deploy. You can use a custom domain, you can use a gateway domain, and use IPv4. So all the different ways to do it are documented here. So for today, we'll keep it simple. So let's say you open up the dashboard. Put in your password. Then you go in deploy. We want to find the application Nextcloud, so we choose Nextcloud here. You can choose a different name if you want, choose different configuration. For now, we can use the basic one. You can use dedicated or certified node. It's not needed for now. Then you can find all the different nodes. You can choose if you want to deploy, let's say, in your own country. For now, today, I'll deploy on the node 10 on FreeFarm. So here, if I wanted to use a custom domain, I would click on custom domain, and then I would need to set it with the DNS provider. But for now, I'll just use the most basic way possible to deploy. So really, we basically did nothing. We just chose the node 10 and then we click deploy. Then it will take a couple of minutes to load.
We've covered the gateways a bit in some past demos, but maybe just a brief refresher while we wait on the deployment. On the threefold grid, you can use a subdomain that is provided from a domain that's provided by a farmer for any workload running on any node. And this is very convenient. It's also much less expensive than renting a public IP for your node or for your workload. And using a gateway domain like this means that you can deploy on any node on the grid. So you could deploy on your own node, even if it's behind a firewall and behind that, and you can use the gateway to access it. So this is very convenient. Let's see how that works now.
So now we see the deployment is done. You can close it here. And at the bottom of the page, you see the Nextcloud deployment table. Now it's loading. So we can see here on the right side, the action. We can open Nextcloud once Nextcloud is set up, but for now we want to click on Nextcloud Setup. So when we go here, it says, please note down the passphrase to access the interface. So this should be pasted and saved in a secure location. Then we open Nextcloud login. Then we'll have to paste the seed phrase, mnemonic we just had. Then just click login, it will set up. Then you'll see on the next page, there are different configurations possible. So you can, for example, add the antivirus for backend for Nextcloud. We won't do it for now. By default, we will be using Collabora, the Nextcloud Office. So you can also change your time zone. You can also set Nextcloud Talk for this. If you're not using a IPv4, you'll need to make sure you read well the documentation on the section install talk and to use turn. But for today, it's not needed. So really, I didn't push any button on this page. I can just click download and start container. This will take a couple of minutes.
So the AIO system here is very nice because it handles updates automatically. This is based on Docker, and it talks to Docker directly, so you don't have to deal with Docker as the user, but in the background, what it's doing is downloading some container images, and it will allow you to update those. So this is very nice because it gives you some control over the different components that you're installing, and you'll see here in the notes that the different components have different requirements, like either using a public IP or doing something else like Mik mentioned, so to get the talk piece running. And also just in general, as you install more components, you'll need more resources in your VM. So that's another piece too, where it's nice you can tune to what your individual needs are. You can update very easily. And once everything starts up, then you'll have these two sort of areas that you can access. One is the AIO side if you need to do updates or enable different features in the future. And then the other one will be the actual Nextcloud deployment itself, where you do all the fun stuff, like storing your files and editing documents and things like that, like we'll be seeing in just a sec.
And at all time, you can go to the dashboard and click on action on the Open Nextcloud, as Scott just said, and the Nextcloud setup. So you can go on the two different links. Don't have to remember them.
And this is a one-time thing that you have to do here in terms of initially downloading the container images. Nextcloud is fairly large in terms of the application, so it does take a bit even on a fast connection. But thankfully in the future, I think do you remember, Mik, does it download the updates automatically and then you have the choice for when to apply them? Or
I think
Setup.
what we can do for sure is that you can set the Borg backup that it downloads, it makes a backup of your Nextcloud instance at a given moment in time every day. And then at this moment, I think it makes the update.
Gotcha.
So we can see here the containers. It's normal when you deploy first that Apache, Nextcloud, and Netlify push are not yet done. They're starting, but they're not yet running. So it takes a couple of minutes. You can see the logs if you want to see what's going on. Then you see the work is being done. You can refresh a couple of times, or just wait a couple of minutes and then it should work. And then we'll see once this is done, we'll be able to go on this same page and then to stop the container and make a backup with the Borg. And this is done all automatically. And then so you have if something happens to your Nextcloud instance, you can bring it back up with the Borg backup. So this is built in the Nextcloud AIO and really useful. Maybe while this loads, I can show you how it works for create a backup. So we want to do a Borg backup. If you want to have a look at the website, it's really simple backup that is integrated. And then once you set the backup, you can create automatic backup and update. So that's really the good part of this backup is that you can also do the update. So I would recommend it for anyone deploying on the Nextcloud to set a Borg backup. And also we had a request from a farmer user to add different ways to make a backup. So you have your Nextcloud instance, then you have your Borg backup, and then we are publishing a guide soon on how to make a backup on another node. So then you have really a big resilient setup. So let's say you have a company and then you deploy 10 or 15 Nextcloud instances, and they all each have their Borg backup on the same node, but then you can have a big node that is just used for storage that you have all your backup of those different Nextcloud instances. So if something happens to a node, you can bring it back. So you see here, everything has been deployed, everything is running. So what we want to do is take note of this password, and then we'll open the Nextcloud here, just this button, but know that it's the same if I'm clicking here on the Open Nextcloud on the dashboard. So we can see here, I will set admin. This is the basic username. And then I put the admin password. So that's it. Nextcloud is deployed. So you can see this is not really a fancy demo because it's just so simple. You just go on the dashboard, you click deploy almost, and then everything is automatically done. So you can explore these pages, but we can just close it for now. And then you have access to the whole Nextcloud deployment. So maybe have a little tour. You can go to files. Then you can deploy your own files. There are pictures too, activity, calendar. So it's really a multi-purpose platform. So once you set your Nextcloud, you can even invite other people to your Nextcloud so you can have a different access. So really you can read the Nextcloud documentation for this, but that's about it. And then if we go back to this page, once this is running, you can see here that we can set a backup and restore. So by default, it's mount backup the directory. So when you do this, it will close the Nextcloud instance for a couple of minutes and then create the backup. So let's say we want to do it. We'll mount backup here, submit backup. So we have here the password for our backups. This is important. Of course, we're not going to keep this instance, so it doesn't matter that we show it to you now. But then you can see that the backup is done. Well, it's set up. So if you click on create backup, it will create the first backup. And then after, once this is done, you can set it with a regular backup for schedule. So every day you have a backup, let's say at 10 p.m. So if we click create backup, it tells me that it will stop all running containers before. So this is okay. So this takes a couple of minutes, and then we have the backup, and then you can choose the moment to set the backup. So for now, let's say this is okay for the demo. We could show you different more features, but this is the basic of how to get Nextcloud running. So this page is still there, but if I refresh it, it will most likely be closed because the containers are running. So you see all the containers are stopped. Maybe once the backup is back on, I could show you how it looks like. But for now, if you have any questions.
Yes, I have a question. Is this a full backup, but this ThreeFold data, or is just a delta backup?
It's a full backup of your instance. So, but it's on the same machine. So if something happens while the Nextcloud instance is running, you can use the Borg backup to bring it back up. And it's really easy. It's like a one click thing. It's really all built in. And the other backup I was telling you about, it's really just a next level step, just to make sure if you want to have a backup on a different node. But for let's say a basic deployment of Nextcloud, it's to have a Borg backup. It's a good security, good basic setup.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe you have another question as well here in terms of the update mechanism. So I assume as Nextcloud is an open source, there will be ongoing changes, right, to the code of Nextcloud and to different features. So how will those different, let's say, updated versions get deployed onto an already installed instance?
So when you're using AIO provides the updates. And I'm trying to remember from my own instance, I believe what you'll see when there's a new version available is at the top of that AIO page, it says, do you want to update? And it might do it automatically for smaller versions, but it asks you for the larger versions where something significant might change. But the thing with the Dockerized setup is that your data and the application are fairly separate, and so it should be fairly seamless to do these updates. And the team at AIO is working to ensure, right, that this happens. So yeah, as far as I've seen in my experience with Nextcloud, it's always very, very seamless to update. And if you were to need to restore a backup and then update from there, it should be basically the same process as if you were updating.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of as you went. Yeah.
And I can show you the page now so now the backup is done. So you could click on Start Container, but just before I'll show you a little bit what it looks like. So we can see that the backup is done at Mount Backup Board. And then you can choose your backup time. So this is really useful. And then you can decide if you want or not the automatic updates. So this will automatically update all container, the master container, and on Saturdays, your Nextcloud app. And you can also receive a notification. So let's say you want to change your backup time, you can just change it here. So something that works for you. Let's say you're working during the day, you want a backup during the night. So when you wake up, it's already backed up. And if you want just to start back the Nextcloud instance, you just click on Start Container and it will load just like we saw before. So it's really plug and play, let's say.
Okay. So do you know how many users are currently using Nextcloud?
On the ThreeFold network?
Not only on ThreeFold, but overall. So how many users are really, let's say?
I was just browsing their page, and I think they said they have tens of millions of users, or over 10 million. So
yeah, I know that Sam published something for the call, and it's 400,000 deployment. So it's a good number.
These are mainly private type of users or commercial users as well?
The
I
two.
think Yeah, I think they have a decent commercial commercial uptake with Nextcloud as well. You know, organizations that
You see a
want to.
reference list on the homepage if you scroll down.
Mhm,
There are a lot of companies like Raiffeisen Bank or Siemens or
mhm.
Yes. Yeah, so I know Nextcloud, they have like a kind of support for the commercial services. So they do it themselves, they offer it. And also they have partnerships with different companies. So I think it's something like GMHB or Nextcloud, something like this. When you see, I don't know the term exactly, but when you see a website with this, it means they're associated with the Nextcloud and they have like the official support with them.
Mhm.
I'll try to find it, but gives you a good idea.
And how would you explain the advantage to have Nextcloud run on the ThreeFold grid compared to any other potential, let's say, hosting provider or cloud provider?
Well, for some folks that have a ThreeFold node at home, I mean, this is pretty hard to beat in terms of a simple way that you can get Nextcloud running, you know, in your at your own home and on hardware that's under your control. Aside from that, you still have a much more decentralized and sort of distributed approach than deploying onto a major cloud, which is another thing that you could do, right? Take Nextcloud and deploy it onto a cloud somewhere. And compared to Nextcloud's offering, that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing in terms of infrastructure, which clouds they're working with, if they're working with clouds. In terms of cost, generally, the ThreeFold network is fairly inexpensive. You're going to have to take more responsibility for your data and these backups. And that's, as Mik was mentioning, something that we're working on is providing more options, right? Because if you deploy to someone else's node or even to your own node and it goes down or fails one day, you need to have a plan for how to bring it back up. And that's definitely a distinction from other clouds, which can offer you more stability in terms of your data, or things like integrated backups that are happening in a way that can recover from, you know, failure of a single machine. So those are some of the ways that you could compare running ThreeFold network versus someone else.
Mhm.
So if I would know a company who is focused on DBIN and real world asset type of tokenization concepts and projects, and if they would be interested in using the ThreeFold grid in general, but maybe also in the context of some of those applications you are just sharing now, like Nextcloud. So who would be in your team able to help them for a technical discussion? So I'm not that far yet to have a real concrete case, but I have one or two potential cases in my mind. But so far I did hesitate to get really engaged with them too intensively, because I'm not quite sure who would technically be able to help them then if they really would like to deep dive, because I would personally not be able to do it at the end of the day. Yeah. So would you, Scott or Mik,
yeah, you can
to contact, yeah.
You can contact me personally for sure. And we also have on Telegram, we have our testers group, which can be a good place to get, you know, kind of support from the community. But yeah, I'm always happy to accept DMs regarding, you know, people deploying on the grid or anything like this.
Thank you.
And maybe just to complete with what I said before, it's Nextcloud GmbH. So when you see this, it's like official partners. So this could be good to when you're looking for different partnerships or.
Okay.
That's the equivalent of incorporated in German.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense now.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so far. So thank you for the demonstration. Yeah.
No, it's a pleasure. Any other questions, or maybe we answered everything? You know everything about.
Maybe one last question, but I think most likely I hope I'm able to answer it to myself. But in terms of the cost, so there's no Nextcloud license fee or something like that, right? If you're going to use it.
Correct.
Okay, so the only cost to a potential commercial user would be the cost of utilizing or using or consuming the ThreeFold grid capacity, right?
Yep, it's just your capacity costs, and
Yeah.
as long as you're self-hosted, which is the
Yeah.
kind of the category this falls under, then yeah, there's no cost that you have to pay to Nextcloud.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a nice feature for sure.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
maybe just before we close up, just for fun, it's now on the manual dev version. So I told you about the Borg backup. So
Mhm.
we saw this today. But then if you want to do a secondary VM backup, then the steps are here, and it's pretty straightforward. So a couple of lines, and the scripts are already written. So kind of easy. So as I said, it's maybe it's in terms of cost wise, if you have a couple of Nextcloud instances running, then you can just have a big storage backup that gets all the Borg backup transferred daily. So let's say you have your Borg backup at noon, then 4 hours later, you make the secondary backup from the Borg to those outside VMs. So this is an added security, and it's let's say for someone who wants to have an enterprise and sell different Nextcloud instances for different users, this could be a good way to make sure you don't lose any data.
Okay. And the documentation that is in the ThreeFold grid manual, right, already currently available, right? So that the documentation you just shared is...
Yeah, exactly. It's on the manual.dev.grid.tf.
Yeah, okay.
But it will soon be on the official manual for the main and testnet, but it's like the staging version, but it's really for the manual dev. So every time we have stuff that is on DevNet, we transfer it to this manual first, and then it goes to the main manual once it's transferred to the mainnet.
Yeah, okay, clear. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so currently you'll find the main steps for how to perform the deployment in the manual at manual.grid.tf, but these incoming changes are about how to create the external backups. And as I'm thinking about it now, we've been doing a bit of work around our quantum safe file system. So that might be something that's also back of mind, is if we could wire this up so that the Nextcloud instance is either storing its files directly to quantum safe file system or making backups there. This would be, I think, rather effective and inexpensive. Although even using a second VM and the solid state disk is going to be not super expensive, because you only need a very small VM to host the backups to receive the incoming data.
Exactly.
So you don't, the VM that's running the instance will need to be larger, again, depending on how many users you have and how many features you're using. But to back up the data, you'd be paying probably just for a single CPU core, a bit of RAM, and then whatever disk you're using. But for orgs that have larger amounts of data or kind of concerned about costs, there are other ways. Like we have a lot of hard disk capacity on the grid. It's more difficult to use, but there are ways to do that. One of them is quantum safe storage. We have some changes around the hard disk stuff coming too. So
yeah, so I guess there will be more and more features on this, because for a partner of ThreeFold, we want to make sure people can deploy on a node that has just HDD, so instead of SSD. So this is a new feature. So I think because of this, we'll have more, maybe more accessibility in terms of HDD features.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess the summary there is, if someone wants to do this for kind of an enterprise setting where they have larger user bases, larger amounts of data, and they want to do it in a way that's very secure and low cost, that's definitely possible.
And we're always here to help. If you have if you want to have a go on this, we can for sure give you support and assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks, Carl.
then.
Thanks, Joseph, Cameron, Shane. Good to see you all.
Thanks everyone for joining.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.